Hello and welcome to the Glamptuary Podcast, where we talk about the experiential outdoor hospitality industries, and I am your host, Bobby Marston. The first issue of Outside magazine came out in 1977, and it was right around that time that a young Robin Thurston was looking through an issue, preparing for a camping trip with his father in Colorado. Fast forward almost 50 years later, Robin is now the CEO of Outside Interactive and is the living embodiment of the mission statement that fuels Outside Inc. Get everyone outside. Robin has been a competitive trail bike rider for most of his life, and to help other riders, he created the collection of wildly successful Map My Ride and Map My Fitness apps, which he then sold to Under Armour in 2013 for a reported $150 million. Robin took the success of that sale and then founded Outside Interactive, which owns Outside Magazine, along with 30 more notable outdoor recreation brands. In this episode, Robin takes us back to that camping trip with his father and explains how he fell in love with the outdoors. We also talk about his entrepreneurial journey, his successes, and we dive into the complex topic of AI and how technology can be used to disconnect and get you closer to nature. We also talk about the upcoming Outside Days Festival, which he was a founder of, and what the future looks like for the outdoor hospitality and recreation industries. So sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 4 on season 5 of the Glamptuary Podcast. Hello, Robin. Welcome to the Glamptuary Podcast.
Well, Bobby, thanks so much for having me.
I know a lot about your history because I've done some research before I had you come on the show, but I would love if you, in your own words, could explain where you're from. Hint, he's from Colorado. What is your love of the outdoors, and how did that bring you to Outside Interactive?
I would say there was sort of like 3 things that happened in my childhood that really got me very involved in the outdoors. The first is I have this, my dad was a big sort of hiker, camper. And, even my parents were divorced when we spent time with my dad, sometimes it was, going places. And I remember a very, very specific, you talked about sort of the path to Outside. In 1979, my dad threw an Outside magazine at me and he said, "This is where we're going." And it was a picture of Arches National Park. And I cut out all the articles and all the pictures and sort of studied Arches. It was for a kid my age, it was an excruciating week of camping. But it certainly was. I had a lot of exposure for things like that to the outdoors. Then I would say, there was a program in Denver public schools that used to bus kids on every other Friday in the winter to the mountains to ski. It was a $7 lift ticket. It included lunch. It included the bus ride. And if you needed ski rentals for $7 for the day, right? And so many, many kids at Denver public schools, got on the yellow bus and they went up to Loveland and other ski areas to do that. And so, that was number 2. And then third was just finding the bike at a very young age. I started riding road bikes when I was about 8, 9 years old. And there was an event in Colorado called the Red Zinger Mini Classic that was, sort of the precursor to the Red Zinger that became the Coors Classic. And so I had a lot of exposure to bike racing and sort of grew up in that system, like the national team system and being part of sort of the ecosystem of cycling in Colorado at a young age. So my love for the outdoors, and I would say it's still my meditative state of, being out on the road bike or the mountain bike or the gravel bike or hiking. For me, this is like the most important time that I have. I mentioned to you, still ride like 8,000 miles a year on the bike. And, to me, it's sort of like the way I think about it is it's like paying yourself first. So like, I don't miss many days. I think, even so far this year, I think I've missed a total of like 15 days total working out, since the beginning of the year. And part of that is just that thesis of like pay yourself first. And that outdoor time is so critical to everyone's health and wellness. Like it's literally, humans are part of nature. We're not like just here in nature. We are literally part of it. Mm-hmm. And so like when you look at stats like, 30 minutes, 20 minutes walking around outdoors lowers blood pressure, it's just obvious that we are highly connected to the planet and sort of the things in how we engage with it. And so, I feel lucky. I found that very young, and it certainly has provided me a path to getting into businesses that for me are, very connected to this journey.
Yeah, that's a cool story that your dad threw the magazine at you. And it was full circle.
Literally threw it at me. Literally, not like gave it to me, like, threw it at me.
That's awesome. I can tell that you're into statistics, and I know that you created Map My Fitness. And talk a little bit about that, because that was a technology platform that was obviously set up to help bikers track what they're doing.
Map My was like, in some ways, it wasn't very obvious. And what I mean by that is like, at the time in 2005, 2006, I was actually looking at like creating other types of startups in the fintech world, like sort of on the finance side. And I happened to go on this trip to Europe, and I was, that we had like 10, and I had lived in Switzerland for 4 years when I was racing. And so like, basically we were sitting around at dinner one night, and somebody just said, they were like, wouldn't it be cool if I could come back to Switzerland and know all these roads that you know? And it was sort of this like light bulb moment. I was like, well, there's sort of like travel books, but there's not like a way to keep track. And for me to send you a link and say, hey, go do this. And, at the time, like this was pre-iPhone, like we had these printouts that you would do that had like turn by turn directions on them, and you'd put them in like a Ziploc, and they would either go in your jersey pocket or your shorts. And, it just blew up. I mean, even before the iPhone, like we had 1 million users on the web before the iPhone launched. And then obviously we got timing incredible related to the iPhone. I mean, we had 2 of the first 100 iPhone apps with Map My Run and Map My Ride. And that was just a really big, like luck is part of it. Right. And it was a really good timing. And, and then we launched in the App Store in 2008. We sold the business to Under Armour for $150 million in 2013. It was an absolutely great outcome for all of the investors and the employees. The employees owned close to 20% of the company, not including me.
Nice.
So it was a really, really good outcome for the employees. And, so it was sort of a win-win on every side. I'm a big sports guy. Like, I just love sports. I love what they mean. I love the engagement, the competitiveness. And so for me, going to Under Armour was great. I think the learning was, and there was a lot of really good things we did. We went out and bought 8 other companies, including MyFitnessPal and Endomondo, and we did a big roll up and we integrated the whole thing. But my learning was probably that, like, being a pure technology company inside of a shirts and shoes company was really challenging. Like, there was a lot of things that it was like they were learning a new discipline by being in digital. And even though I was running like e-com and all the different components, it was still, it was still competing in some ways with what I'd call the core shirts and shoes business. And, so like I had a great 3 years there. I left. I had a non-compete for a couple of years. So sort of interestingly, I went to run a consumer genetics company in between, which was super interesting. But I just really wanted to get back into the outdoors. I really wanted to, I had a lot of ideas about, like, one is how much friction exists for people to get into the outdoors. And so, like, how could you reduce friction? How do you sort of create this flywheel of inspiring people and then actually engaging them and getting them to activate no matter what it is? It could be a ride today. It could be a run. It could be a hike. It could be a vacation. It could be an event. How do you get people sort of engaged in that? And so, Outside Interactive was really born out of that idea about how to reduce friction, how to bring all these different components together, and how to make it better for the customer. and so we've been sort of on that journey the last 7 years. Ironically, we bought my first company back. So I bought my fitness back from Under Armour about 1.5 years ago. So now I own the first company that I started and Outside Interactive. So it's been sort of a fun journey to see those things come together.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of full circles happening now.
A whole bunch, exactly.
So when you were looking, after moving on from that company, was Outside one of a few ways that you were looking to try and connect people with the outdoors? Or because, at least from my perspective, the only thing I ever knew was Outside Magazine. I wasn't aware that there were other things happening. So I'm curious what led you to make the decision to do it through that portal.
Well, Outside, we bought Outside Television and Outside Magazine at the same time in February of 21. It was actually, that was almost, call it 3 years into the journey. So we started we merged together and we bought some endurance brands like Velo and Triathlete Magazine and Women's Running and what was called Competitor. We bought that, and then we merged together with some cycling events. We had 10 cycling events, physical participatory cycling events. And then we had this idea around this technology platform we had started building, which was kind of an aggregation of bringing these things together to make it easier for the user, single sign-on, single membership. So we merged those things together. And then, we immediately were looking at what other things could you bolt onto this that start to bring the experience together? And we knew some things I don't know about you, Bobby, but I typically ski in the winter and then I'm, doing some type of mountain biking or road riding or, gravel riding in the summer. And then I'm doing hiking. I might even try some new things. My kids might be hey, I want to try hiking or, something else kayaking. And so I go explore that. And so most people are doing 3 to 5 activities in a year, but it was all disconnected before. If you were reading Ski Magazine in the winter or going to see Warren Miller Films that we own, you just kind of leave that venue and we would no longer know what you were doing or where you were at. And so the idea of connecting all the dots and the data was really, how do you understand this customer journey better so that you can start to help them navigate? It could be you getting into a new category or sport. It could be that you want to get better at something that you're doing. It's, my view in these participatory sports is as a consumer, you're constantly kind of looking for the next thing you're going to do. That could be the next ride. It could be the next event. It could be the next big vacation. Your buddies or friends are hey, let's go run a marathon. And you're okay, we're going to go try to do London. What do we all need to do that? Training and hotels and all of that. So that was really the premise. And then, we bought a company called Active Interest Media, and they own Ski and Backpacker and Yoga Journal and Warren Miller Films. And then we bought an event photography company. And then in February of 21 was when we got a hold of Outside Magazine and Television, and we got a hold of Gaia GPS and an event reg platform and a number of other things. And that's when we rebranded to Outside Interactive, because Outside was the best brand in the category, but obviously well known as a magazine. Most people, as an example, Outside Television's in 30 million households. Mm-hmm. But sometimes when you bring up Outside Television, people immediately ask, is that part of Outside Magazine? Which it wasn't. It was actually a license. It wasn't actually part of Outside Magazine. So, we brought them together, but they were owned by 2 different people.
Well, that's interesting. And I think you're right in that a lot of these, they're all wonderful brands. They're all wonderful channels. They're all wonderful groups of subscribers and fans of those particular things, but they all have one thing in common. It's that people want to be outside. And a lot of times, at least for me, you ask me I don't know how I do it, but I ski, I run, I bike, I raft, I kayak, I horseback ride. I just like to do a lot of different things. I also have friends that they have one thing that they do and they love to do it. But I think it's because they haven't really been introduced to a way that connects to other opportunities. Because when I brought them on other things, they get excited about that just as much as they get excited about that one thing that they do.
Oh, yeah. And I think, look, there are people out there that only do one activity. But realistically, most consumers, and I would also sort of say that this new, more casual consumer that's really exploded in the industry, like it's really where the growth engine is right now. This very almost, there's a whole, like, you know, I'd say hundreds of millions of people around the planet that do not consider themselves outside people. They just like to go outdoors. And so they're sort of discovering a lot of these categories and things that they're doing. And what I would say is this new individual is really trying a lot of different things. Like one weekend they might go hiking, then they might try to explore climbing, then somebody might convince them to go snowshoeing. And so they're trying a lot of things. And what we at least hope to do is not only, you know, say on the content side, like write content that inspires them to want to go do that, but give them skills and tips for how to get better at it, or to tell them what gear they need. Because, you know, Bobby, if you go out, I'm saying, like, let's say you decide to go climbing, and if you don't have the right equipment, you're going to have a terrible time. Like, it's not going to be fun, right? And so, you know, getting people the right information when they're getting into these categories they're trying to improve is just really, really critical for them having a good experience and wanting to come back to do it over and over and over.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a good segue into the way people are traveling. I love to glamp, and I fell in love with it on complete accident. I was driving across the country with my dog, and I couldn't find a place in Vegas to stay. And I ended up stumbling upon, through the internet, searching, sitting at a cafe, this guy that had a yurt in the mountain. And he said, "Welcome to Pets." So knew nothing about it, went up there, never stayed in a yurt before, and I had an amazing time. And it turned out he was turning this property into like this, I'd say, manosphere. So you could go and like do a obstacle course that was military grade. You could shoot bows and arrows.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm like, okay, that's great. That's awesome. I said, it's themed. Like, it makes sense. Like, if I was going to do a bachelor party, I would probably bring it here now. But I was like, I wonder how many more places are like that around. And this was back in 2013. So this was kind of before Under Canvas had taken off, and before a lot of these other outfits had really brought glamping or outdoor hospitality to the forefront. But I think now that this is becoming such a dominant, trending way to travel and experience the outdoors in a comfortable way, it's also a way to introduce people to activities and things that they might not do. So I'm kind of curious what you think about, because you've been talking a lot about recreation. What are your thoughts on outdoor hospitality, and how does Outside Interactive maybe play into that?
Yeah, so I just got back from the Mountain Travel Symposium up in Whistler. Like, I was speaking there last week, and it's amazing to me. I mean, you know, there's the traditional resort that, you know, again, ski resort, ski destination, they're having, many of them are having to sort of reinvent themselves for the summer because the winters are getting shorter, and, you know, they're like considering how do they keep driving traffic. And so, you know, a lot of these places have, you know, like at the top of Vail, there's a big obstacle course and an alpine slide, and, you know, these other things that you can take your family up there and do in addition to hiking, right? Like, you can obviously go up to the top and, you know, hike around as much as you want. I also think it's like there, you know, to your point, like there are a lot of people thinking about, you know, sort of the full four seasons, and how do they encourage, and while someone's on site, you know, it could be trying something new, and that means they got to have the right equipment on site. They got to have the right instructors on site. And so, you know, I agree with you. Like, what we're seeing is that there's a whole mix of types of things that are launching. Like, I take somebody, I mean, you picked Under Canvas, but like, I take somebody like a Ramble, who is like building these new age campsites that, you know, are super hip, have some connectivity, have maps and activities that you can go do right from there. You know, and the camping sites are like kind of like, you know, the new version of a KOA as an example, right? And then you have like full service resorts that are offering these things, and really realizing that when people are coming there, the reason that they're coming there is to go do all of these different activities. And so, to the point, they're thinking about what guides they need, what gear they need on site. And I just think there are some really sort of large trends that are going to drive this over the next, you know, decade. The first one is like, even weight loss drugs have a massive impact on people moving more. Just, they want to move more. They lose some weight. They're like, hey, let's go. It might be a completely different type of vacation than they might have done before, right? So like, I think the weight loss drugs are going to have a pretty big impact. There's this broader health and wellness sort of theme that's going on now that I think it's really, if you look at the younger generations, they're not drinking as much. They're really thinking about what's going in their body from a food perspective and from a toxin perspective. And, if you go to TikTok and Instagram, like it's all over, like the messaging is out there. And then I think there's like this outdoor sort of disconnection theme, which is that we are connected to the outdoors. And it is a moment where, at least for me and many of the people that I know, typically where they're disconnected when they're out there, whether it's on a bike ride and you're not checking your phone, you're not looking at the messages, or you're on a hike. And I think that people are really craving being disconnected, right? Like not being, especially if they're working remote and they're on Zoom all day and, they just like, at the end of the day, their mind is just like, I can't take any more of this, right?
Yeah.
And so I think those themes over the next decade are going to be huge. There's one that I don't know about yet, which is in a world where AI, if you're like, I could go dark on AI and I could go super like, it's going to change like everything to the positive side of it.
Yeah.
But if you believe that it means that you and I can recapture more time and that abundance is coming and we have more free time, then I would argue that the outdoors and sort of this base of people who don't consider them outdoorsy, but they're just love the outdoors is going to explode. Like it is going to be, if you believe that, right? And so, I think there are just some really big tailwinds. And we're just trying to build an ecosystem that really helps people explore this, and so like, how do you take someone historically might have been, I'm using an example, maybe they were looking at like the top 5 ski destinations on Ski Magazine. Yeah. How do you take them from that very moment into booking that trip? When they book that trip, then they're like thinking about the gear they need. They're thinking about the trails they're going to go do or what they're going to do while they're there. And so like, we're really trying to kick off that flywheel with actually getting people from the moment of inspiration to activation. How do we actually get them out the door doing it? Because that has such a big impact, we believe, on their health and wellness and, certainly how the whole outdoor ecosystem works.
Yeah, I think you're totally onto that because just thinking back to Ski Magazine, for instance, I used to get that every month as a kid and I would read about all the places I haven't visited, and then fortunately in the magazine, they also featured gear. So you really could kind of get a lot of things figured out. It was the olden days though. So you had to use the phone and you'd call and make your bookings or go to the shop and there's no way to order online. That's all changed. So I'm curious, like, was that the reason that you made the move to get Intopia? Was that to try to create some kind of a way to allow the buying cycle to be complete from the time you've inspired them to the time that they activate? Yeah.
And so, one is Intopia as a platform now powered by outside is really amazing and has so many partners. I mean, hundreds of partners in the sort of outdoor space, Vail, Alterra, Whistler, Pebble Beach, water parks, national parks, is that how you get someone from that moment of inspiration into activation. And as you know, in these categories, it's not just about booking a hotel, right? No. It's like, I got to book the ski tickets, the ski rentals, the ski instruction. I need a van. I might want to do spa services. I might want to get restaurant bookings. I might want to, while I'm skiing or I'm hiking, somebody else might want to be zip lining or some other activity. And so what Intopia was great at was like, and is great at, is like bringing that entire process together in one seamless way for the customer. So, if you're booking your ski vacation at vail.com, we're powering the ski rental, the ski instruction, the hotel, the ski tickets all in one package so that you don't have to go jump out and do that in a million different ways or call a bunch of people and bring that together. And so that was really the idea about buying them and integrating them. And our customer is going to start seeing a lot more deeper integration of this directly into our mapping utilities, our content, our event services, businesses, because we want to make it easy on people. We want them to go do this stuff more than anything.
And then, that again, great segue. So thanks for teeing me up, Robin. The next thing you added into your wide repertoire of things that you offer to get people more excited and engaged with the outdoors is Outside Fest, which is now called Outside Days. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you guys have created. And we had Connor Hall on the last episode, so he kind of spoke about it from the regulatory side of things, which also, I'm sure you would agree, helps to have someone on the inside that can cut through some of that red tape. But talk about it from your perspective. How did it start? What were your thoughts initially? Because there really wasn't something like this before.
Yeah, and not for consumers. I mean, I think there's sort of two things I'd say about Outside Days and sort of what I would call the flywheel of what Outside Interactive has been building. The first is obviously through great content, and that content could be written, audio, video, podcasts, is how do you move people from inspiration to activation? But then once you've activated, so again, I don't care if it's a bike ride, a run, a hike, then you start getting involved in these communities, right? And the communities are extremely passionate. I mean, when you really get into these categories, and again, that could be a simple walking group to a running group to a hike group to, the entire business infrastructure is the community around that category, right? Of camping, hiking, skiing, cycling, whatever it is. And there really wasn't an event that, if you take something like South by Southwest, right? Mm-hmm. South by Southwest is really a technology and film community. That's what it is. That's what it's become, right? It's about bringing all of those people together, music, film, technology, all into one venue. And I lived in Austin for 7 years, and I think I've been to 10 South bys. And I was just why doesn't this exist for the outdoors? When we started it, I wouldn't say that we didn't know if the formula was going to work. So what I mean by that is we have a B2B event that has all the industry there. And, it's really about the industry coming together, the community of the industry coming together. Yep. And then we launched into the consumer event on Friday night, and we have 3 days of music, film festival, speaker series, experiential stuff. And when we first started, we didn't really know if that formula was going to resonate with consumers. And, the first year we had 18,000 people. We were whoa, there's people are interested in this, this is a big thing. Last year we had 35. We're expecting more this year in, at Auraria. We had to move from Civic Center Park to Auraria this year, but the venue is going to be awesome. But I would simply put it, Bobby, that it is about celebrating the outdoors and bringing the community together, right? What I love about being on the ground for the, 5-6 days, and specifically the 3 during the consumer event is first of all kids under 13 are free. So we really encourage families to come, right? And sort of build that base of kids getting to explore the outdoors and hear these speakers and, see some of the films and, obviously hear the music and be outdoors. But for me, when you're walking around Outside Days for that 3 days, what you're realizing is people are not on their phones. They are super focused on the experience that we've created. And to me, that's what the community of the outdoors is all about, right? Is having that time in nature. And who cares if it's in the middle of Denver? It's not on the side of a mountain or, some remote place. It's in Denver, but it's really, really you feel the outdoor culture there over that, call it, 5 to certainly the 3 days for the consumer experience.
Yeah, I've attended every year and I've had a wonderful time. I've really enjoyed the speaker series, Diana Nyad and, mountain climber.
David Blaine came. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It was interesting to see those two go back and forth.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
for sure.
It's the passion that you mentioned of being outside, however they've experienced it. And you do a great job bringing together a lot of different organizations, and you don't make it feel like a trade show. And I think that's why it's so successful. Is it in its essence very much is a trade show, but it's not positioned that way. And I think you do a great job of complementing pure entertainment. You get great bands, and it's really just, again, celebrate the outdoors. And I think with Denver, when we were moving here from California, and I had spent time skiing here, but when I've been living here, I've been talking to a lot of the people. And first of all, a lot of people aren't really from Colorado, at least a lot of the people I meet.
Yeah.
But they all moved here with the intent of getting outside. And they specifically chose the state because it had access to so many different cool things to do. I think Colorado's number 3 on the list of 50, United States of how big the outdoor industry is. So it makes perfect sense to me that it's here.
It's a great place to have it, for sure. There's no question that we feel like it's a centering place for people that want to celebrate the outdoors to come and, really enjoy everything that Colorado has to offer too. And, now we have Sundance coming to Boulder, and, there's a lot happening here. And so at least I'm very hopeful that, we already know it's having an impact on the economic impact of the festival is already growing. And, I'm sure Connor talked a little bit about this, but we wanted to have that impact, but we also want it to be a moment where people see Colorado maybe for the first time, and then they want to come back to experience other parts of it. That could be skiing. That could be a mountain adventure in the middle of the summer. It could be our parks, whatever it is. We want them to, this to be potentially the first kernel of how they learn about Colorado and, have the chance to celebrate it.
Well, I'm excited to see where this goes, and I'll always be in attendance as long as I'm in the state. And even if I'm not in the state, I'll travel back in and see what you guys are up to.
Well, I hope so.
So kind of jumping back into the technology side, obviously you mentioned AI and it sits here. The waves, first and second and third wave have already came. There's multiple waves coming behind it. Who knows where it's going to go? But if I'm thinking back to my surfing days, you're just waiting for that wave to catch that's yours. And I think that's kind of how people are looking at AI is when the wave feels right, maybe I'll jump on board. But it is a tool at the end of the day right now. And it can be a tool used to allow you to connect with technology that expedites the process of connecting you with ways to get outside, because before it, we had to sit there and go to websites and look at everything. And you're talking about consolidating it. AI will consolidate it even more in a shopping process. Yeah. What are your thoughts about kind of what's happening in technology as far as how people are going to shop on a site or a collection of sites like Outside Interactive, and that process will change? I won't be at the keyboard anymore. I'll just be asking AI, hey, send me the top 5 places I can go kayak.
I think with every technology sort of, how it's evolved, so when I think about something like the iPhone release, right? If you look today, the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of health and wellness apps there are, navigation apps, right? It's kind of hard to imagine. What's funny, Bobby, I remember going to Silicon Valley in 2009 to pitch Map My Fitness to, all the venture firms. Mm-hmm. And everyone turned us down and was like, well, no one's going to run a ride with their phone or hike or whatever. And I was like, no. Everybody is going to run and ride with their phone. Everybody. It's not even a question, because it has safety, security, tracking, maps. It has music. It has everything that you need in one use case versus say even a Garmin or whatever. Yeah. And when I think about AI, I think that at least we certainly think it's going to help us from and help the customer from a aggregation and personalization perspective, right? And we're going to be doing, we're continuing to work more and more with the LLMs for how even from a sort of authentic source, how we show up, right? So that the customer can find the at least what we believe is the most authentic source for some of the things that are, related to the outdoor industry. And connecting them to getting them to do what they want. And so my view is it's essential that we think, and the industry thinks about how they're going to leverage it. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I still think that there's going to be a bit of a reversion to authenticity. If you look at what's happening in social right now, there's so much AI slop. There's so much stuff that's getting pushed to you and I every day on Instagram and on LinkedIn and all of these places. And I think that customers are going to go and they're going to go back to brands that they know. And so I think being and continuing to create great product, great content, and be that authentic source is really, really important. But I do think like we like, the iPhone have to realize the benefits of it and use it in places that's going to help the customer get the best experience they possibly get. And I do think because of the personalization, I do think it's going to bring more customers into the space. So I actually think the total addressable markets for outdoors are going to continue to grow over the next decade because of AI.
And in theory, if AI increases efficiency, it then allows for more time for us to get outside. So the hope is people still have some jobs, so they have some money so they can, hire the guides and things like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to allow people more time to do what they want. And if AI can then be further used to connect you with the authentic people and the people that are presenting their data in the right way, I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest challenges is just there's a way to present data on a website. And now there's going to be a new way that's going to be agentic friendly. And the people that get on board with that quicker, I think, are going to realize more success.
Totally. 100% agree. I mean, I think we're trying to, as an organization, I'm a big believer in people and the knowledge bases they have and leveraging tools. So I look at AI as more like what happened in finance when Excel really took off, right? And so we as an organization, we have to find all the best ways to use it. But I still think you have to really think about how your people are leveraging it, how their knowledge is going to help your business from an authentic perspective, their creativity, their expertise, all of that to me really matters.
Well, to that point, what do you see as the current biggest challenges for the outdoor hospitality and recreation industries? And what do you think some solutions are to overcome those challenges?
I mean, I'm often asked about our business, like what inning do you think the, sort of materialization of this sort of perfect fluid experience for the customer is? Like where are you in this sort of journey? And to use a baseball analogy, I'd say we're still in the second or third inning. It's still early about reducing friction. So my view is, at a very, very high level, the biggest threat to, the outdoor industry and to the hospitality market right now, I would argue is, one is, certainly from a global perspective, there's, no shortage of challenging things geopolitically going on. But if you think about that, a kid born today is going to spend 30 years on a screen. I would say the biggest challenge to the outdoor industry right now is, it's technology. I mean, the reality is as many positives as there are, technology is there's a famous earnings call for Netflix when Reed Hastings was asked, "Who are your competitors?" And he said, "We don't have any. The only competitor that we have is sleep." Mm-hmm. And I was like, that is a travesty. That the fact that a technology company is spending all of their time trying to get you to binge watch and not sleep is really scary. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you look at the major tech platforms, I don't care if it's X, I don't care if it's Instagram, Meta, TikTok, YouTube. They don't care if you go outdoors. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm not saying they don't have some great content on that celebrates the outdoors, but frankly, all of their incentives are built around you spending as much time on that screen as possible. Right. Yep. So I would say that the biggest two challenges the outdoor hospitality sort of, whatever you want to call it, adventure travel space faces is, one, technology and the amount of time it's essentially consuming from us so that we don't have time to go do the things like be in the outdoors. And then, just this whole sort of friction part of how dispersed all these things still are. One of the reasons I always say the participants in the outdoor industry were viewed and are viewed as really, really dedicated and why they have so much passion for it is because you used to put up with a frickin' ton of friction just to go skiing. Like, my God, I mean, the rental process or the ticketing process. I mean, it's really hard, you know? And so like, my God, try going to rent a kayak. I mean, oh my God. I mean, it's like, it's an all day, maybe all weekend thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I think taking that friction out and thinking about how to use technology to celebrate and get into the outdoors is critical. But I would say these are some of the biggest challenges that the industry has.
Yeah. And you being a technology company, I think can help to pave that path, you know, of figuring out what's the balance. You know, how do we get rid of that friction? How do we get you to connect with the thing you want as quickly as possible and get rid of all the fat and the distractions and the ads and all the other things that just prolong that process?
Totally. And that is really the goal. How do we just make it from the moment you decide to do something, again, whether that was triggered by something, a piece of inspiration that we provided or somebody else provided, how do we make it super seamless for you to get out and do that thing? Because in our view, everybody in the outdoor, like if you think about the total hours spent outdoors by the human race right now, right? It certainly is not 30 hours a week. There's an immense amount of time spent on technology. If a similar amount of time was spent in the outdoors, the outdoor industry is going to win as a whole. And so is the hospitality industry, all of that. So like, how do we just keep increasing the amount of time that you, Bobby, can spend outdoors in a given week?
Yeah. I've often thought about doing this podcast outside.
You should try. I love that idea.
I should. You're very well traveled. You run it sounds like a plethora of different companies that are all designed to get you to travel and go experience things on the outdoors. What is the favorite place you've ever visited and why? And then what is a place you've never visited, but you can't wait to see?
I have been very fortunate in my life to be able to travel to, I think, over 65 countries to ride my bike. My absolute favorite, I put this at the top of the list, is a place I lived for 4 years, which is Switzerland. I mean, and by the way, Switzerland, if you are a hiker, a cyclist, a runner, it just would, between the terrain and the scenery and, you know, even the food in parts of Switzerland, you know, it's just an amazing place to spend in the outdoors. And they really celebrate that culture, you know. I can point to, you should go to the Dolomites for this specific reason, right? You should go to Spain, or, you know, you should go to this beach. I could say all those things, but I'm saying from a place to go spend a week or 2 weeks celebrating the outdoors, like no one does it like Switzerland. No one. Places that I have not been that I really want to go. There are, I would say, like, if I had to pick one place, I would really like to go to I've been to the East Coast of Australia. I have not spent a lot of time on the West Coast, and frankly, I've not spent I've been to New Zealand once for work, but did not get a chance to like spend a lot of outdoor time there. Those are some places that I'd love to go, you know, and really spend some meaningful time at. But there's also places like in Eastern Europe, like, you know, that just have like some amazing, like, I haven't spent any time in Greece. I'd love to go ride more in Greece. You know, I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time across Italy, and there were some absolutely beautiful places across Italy to ride your bike, and, you know, hike and run and all of these things. But I'd have to say probably New Zealand for a place I have not spent enough time in, and Switzerland for anybody it's a must go.
Those are great options. I am taking a trip for the first time, celebrate my 10-year wedding anniversary with my wife. Who else would I be celebrating a 10-year wedding anniversary with? But I'm going to South Africa. Sarah Dusek, we mentioned on our canvas.
Yeah, which is beautiful.
Yeah, she opened a few and far. It's a brand new like luxury safari destination. Never been on an African safari. Checking that box. South Africa, checking that box. Can't wait.
That'll be an amazing trip. That will be really like, and talk about really being in outdoor culture, right? Everything from, the animal, like being able to go on a real safari, which by the way, I also have not done. I would love to do at some point, but like being able to be in that level of nature and, in that place in the world, I mean, it'll be wonderful. You'll have an amazing time. I think they say something like, don't get eaten. I think that's like the motto when you go on safari.
Yeah. My wife has really reminded me of that we have to avoid getting eaten. Yeah. And I'm much more, I'm the risk taker in the relationship. And so I might be the guy taking too many steps close to see what's going on over there. So hopefully she pulls me back before that happens.
Totally.
So speaking of things to look forward to, I'm really excited for Death Cab for Cutie. What is the one thing you're looking forward to for this upcoming Outside Days?
I mean, look, last year, my family will come down. We have a whole kids center this year. We obviously have the startup pitch day again this year, which really for me as an entrepreneur is really fun and, get to engage with these companies and kind of things that they're doing that are super interesting. For me, like, and there will be some new, like, we'll sort of expand some of the experiential things that are happening in and around. Like Jeep is going to have this big drive course that I think is going to be super fun on site. And so like what I would say is there's nothing more than I look forward to spending, 3 or 4 days with my family where they are essentially completely disconnected. Like we will not have, their phones or iPads, they're with us and they are completely disconnected. And for me, that's just it's sort of a magical moment to not only see my family do that, but see other families do that. Of course, I'm looking forward to seeing all the partners and, hearing the music and seeing the speaker lineup and all of that. But, 4 days of serenity with serenity might be a strong word. 4 days of outdoor time with my family will be super fun.
That's awesome to hear. Hear. Connor and I have said we're going to meet up for Death Cab for Cutie. Hopefully I can rock out.
You'll see me. You'll see me for sure. Yeah. That's the night my wife is coming. So we will definitely be rocking it on Friday night.
All right. I look forward to it. Well, Robin, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I'm really excited to see, what you do at the festival and how you continue to connect people with the outdoors. Such a crucial thing to get people off screens, but to be able to use their screen to get them off the screen, I think that's the magic.
That's the magic. That is the magic for sure. Bobby, thanks so much for having me.
I'd like to thank Robin for taking the time to speak with us today and for all of the wonderful things he and Outside Inc. are doing to connect people with nature. Outside Days begins on May 29th for the general public and a few days earlier for the outdoor industry. Tickets are on sale now at outsidedays.outsideonline.com, and a link will be in the show notes for easy access. If you'd like to learn more about Robin and all the wonderful brands that he manages, you can visit Outside's website at www.outsideonline.com. That is www.outsideonline.com. And if you like what you've heard today from Glamptuary, you can find more episodes just like this one on our website, which is www.glamptuary.com. That is www.glamptuary.com. You can also follow us on all the socials with our handle @Glamptuary. And hopefully, I'll see all of you at Outside Days end of May. And if not, I'll see you again on another Glamptuary Podcast episode down the road. So until then, be well, safe travels, and namaste.